Welcome back to the Convo Couch, ladies and gentlemen. I am Pastor Jardula, and for you today, I have a great guest. I have a friend of mine from Florida. I consider him my brother. His name is Michael Santucci, but I call him Treasure, and he is an attorney at law in Florida. Michael Santucci, welcome.
How you doing, Pasta?
I'm doing great. This Epstein case has gotten me crazy, and I'm sorry for texting you on the regular. I know that you have a life to live with your family and everything, but this whole case has taken over us, and I know you have a lot of access to information. You actually know these judges. You know a lot of these lawyers. You know the sheriffs. You know everybody in that town. You've practiced law in West Palm Beach as well as Broward. Can you tell me you got anything juicy for me?
I'm looking at the federal court docket of the USA versus Epstein case. It's a federal government's case against him that was just opened this month. And I'm literally looking at the list of all the documents that have been filed in the case. Federal practitioners like myself have access and a subscription to the dockets of all the federal courts. So I'm looking through, and I could tell you document for document what was filed in the case. I'm pulling up the ones that are interesting, in real time and looking at them.
Yeah.
So I could tell you what's interesting to me right away, Pasa, if you don't mind me running with this.
I would love to hear what's interesting to you right away, because you have a lawyer's perspective, so you have a little bit more insight, because I think a lot of people are just holding on and saying, what's going to happen next? But let's unpack what you found interesting when I called you that day frantically, asking you to look into the files.
Well, the case starts out with a sealed indictment, and that was recent. That was this month. That was July 2nd.
Wait a second. You're saying the sealed indictment is something new? Because the mainstream media has been talking about Acosta's case was a sealed indictment. Can you explain a bit about what's been sealed as of recent?
An indictment, for those of you who don't know, it's the allegations the government makes against a defendant, and they filed theirs as a sealed indictment. It was placed in a vault. Then 5 days later, it gets unsealed. That got unsealed, first week of July of 2019. The indictment, which I have right on my screen right now, is from 2019, and it covers a whole list of crimes that Epstein is alleged to have committed. They're not proven yet. And it has another section which lists the property that the government is looking to seize.
Wow.
So his personal property.
Could you give us a little taste of what they're looking to grab? We heard about the boat and the house, but give us a little idea of what Epstein has consumed and has grabbed a hold of that we want to take back.
I'll read right from it. It says that the government's looking for the following specific property: a lot or parcel of land located at 9 East 71st Street, New York, Manhattan.
Gotcha.
Owned by a company called Maple Inc., which I haven't checked this out, but I'd imagine he has some connection to it.
Maple, what's it called?
Maple Inc.
Like maple syrup?
Correct.
All right, so we have to look into that. Got it.
Can you look into why Bernie doesn't have his own line of maple syrup?
Oh, well, because he made a deal that with Ben and Jerry that he would get more attached to ice cream rather than maple syrup and leave that be.
He's from Vermont.
Well, he's got other people. He might have a little investment in maple syrup, but he doesn't own any maple syrup. What other pieces of property is the government looking to grab a hold of that they already gave him?
That is the target of this indictment, is that piece of property. So something must have been alleged to have happened on those premises. So it's 9 East 71st Street, New York.
And that's the suspected. That was the suspected mansion that was gifted to him by Les Wexner. So we have to look into that one. Okay, let me ask you a couple other questions. It was sealed. It was unsealed. Does it name any names in these indictments? Because a lot of people are waiting. They want to know what's going to happen next, when some people are going to get arrested. Is there any names of any co-conspirators or anything like that in this indictment?
Yeah. Pasta, I'll send over, if I haven't already, a copy of the actual indictment so the Convo Couch can publish that for its viewers.
Thank
But
you.
and I'm getting this stuff, in real time. I'm just scanning through this stuff, and I see no other names listed in the indictment. Now, this is the initial indictment. I see no mention of co-conspirators. I see mentions of people under alias names such as employee number 1, employee number 2, employee number 3, who are alleged to have helped to recruit young women into his web. There's also references to victim number 1, victim number 2, victim number 3, which is not strange, because in an indictment, the government would not be allowed to name any minor victims. But once they become of age, that can be a different story. So it is possible that these are recent occurrences. And I just learned from a local attorney's case here that has sued Epstein that there's at least one woman who said that while he was on
Work leave,
that he actually used that time to commit more crimes and commit further sexual batteries. But I don't want to get off on a tangent on that right now. But I can walk you through the docket a little further and get to what I think is strange. And I'd like to get the help of my staff to look into this a little further. But there was a motion filed by Epstein.
Mm-hmm.
He was picked up by the government, taken into custody.
Does it say where he was picked up at?
Let's see.
Where he was taken into custody? I know he was coming back from Paris, I heard, but...
Yeah. I'd have to read a little further. I don't want to go...
Yeah, just tell me what you found was interesting, because you said something before that was, when we were talking, that sounded so interesting, about on the grounds why he shouldn't be detained.
Yeah, and that's it. He files a motion with the court. The judge's name is Judge Richard M. Berman. He's a federal judge appointed for life in the Southern District of New York. So his attorneys file a motion for pretrial release.
Okay.
That's not strange. It's like somebody gets picked up, gets arrested, your attorney goes to court for you and asks the judge, can you let him out pending trial? We'll post a bond, we'll follow whatever conditions, we'll wear an ankle bracelet, whatever the government wants, and the judge decides is appropriate, but they don't want him sitting in a federal lockup. So he files a motion with the judge, and then immediately, the same day, files a motion to seal that document. Now, sealing documents in federal court is nothing strange when you have confidential information, but what I want to know is what is confidential in his motion to the judge asking for pretrial release? What is so confidential about the reasons why this guy thinks the government should trust him to run around free while he's awaiting trial? So he moves to seal the document. The judge grants the motion to seal that same day. Again, that's not strange. Even the sealing of it the same day, the order granting the motion, that's not strange if you have truly confidential information that the public should not see. What is it in that motion that he filed for pretrial release that he doesn't want the world to see? And what did the judge think was so confidential that something this high profile should be kept from the public? So I'd like to get that document if you don't mind.
No, please if we could get some documents in here and talk about it, because, go ahead.
Tammy, can you bring us that motion to seal Epstein's motion and his actual motion asking for pretrial release?
I'm on it.
Thank you.
It seems to me like not just the lawyer's eyes and the lawyer's ears, but the mainstream people, the general population will say he wanted that seal because he didn't want anybody to know the deal he possibly made with the government. Because wasn't there a pitch or a ploy or a demand to say that his last agreement was a global agreement and that it was pretty much essentially gave him a get out of jail free card to do what he wanted to do because he already struck a deal that protected him? Or is that...
That's what I'm hearing and reading, but I have not been able to independently confirm that yet. But yeah, that's the talk. That's the talk, and that's what people are concerned about.
Yeah, I mean, I know you're not a criminal attorney, but does this case seem a little strange to you? You look into this stuff all the time. Is there anything that seems really, really odd? Is there something that really just jumps off the page and says, man, this is just out of whack, this case?
Because I deal with intellectual property and federal lawsuits involving copyrights, trademarks, patents, it's not strange for us to file a motion to seal a document that has some like secret sauce in it, or some, information that's proprietary, like a trade secret or a patent application in process. But in a criminal case, when you have something this high profile, where you have talk about this guy's connections to a lot of different people, and you have the strange circumstances with the prior case, yeah, we want to know what's in that motion. We want to know his reasons why he thinks it should be released.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tammy.
You're the best, Tammy.
Tammy Gordon.
She's awesome. So what do you got there? You got some secret sauce?
Paralegal extraordinaire. You must have tattoos to work at my office.
Gotcha.
All right.
Give us the secret sauce.
Okay. Here's his. Have the motion for leave to file. We write outline Geoffrey's motion for pretrial release. This is his motion for pretrial release. In the Southern District of New York, they follow a strange practice. Instead of filing a motion, you do it as a letter to the judge. Over there, it works. I've practiced in that jurisdiction before, and I found that to be different. This is a 16-page motion that somehow Tammy was able to get. So far, there are no redactions. And we're going to have a cliffhanger on this one, because I know you don't want me to read all 15 substantive pages.
No, we just want the secret sauce.
Air. So we'll have to.
Well, I told people that stuff is.
For you guys. I'll do this for you. I'll give you the headings and the summary.
Yes.
And not bore you with the applicable law. One argument he makes is that Mr. Epstein's 14-year record of law-abiding behavior rebuts any presumption in favor of pretrial detention. Basically, he's been saying, I've been a good boy, Judge. Let me go. He claims he didn't do anything wrong for 14 years.
Well, I think they got the 14 years mixed up. 14 years is something else that we refer to. The fact is that he's had so many accusations of 14-year-old girls.
Touche. Another argument that he claims the government fails to meet its burden of proving that no combination of conditions will assure Mr. Epstein's appearance in public safety.
What does that mean?
Government fails to meet its burden of proving no combination of conditions will assure. I think he's basically arguing that the government has not shown that any other form, that this is the only form of detention that is going to work. I guess he's saying that the government has a burden to prove that something like a house arrest or an ankle bracelet or something like that wouldn't be sufficient. So
let me ask you another question, Mikey, here, and you tell me: is the government being as transparent as they can on this case? Have we finally reached a point where we can't bury stuff on Epstein it will be in the public eye, and if they're trying to hide stuff or they're trying to be secretive, we know, or are they still acting in a way where they're trying? It's very suspicious that the government has some involvement, that they want to unwrap this in the way they want to.
Well, there's been I don't know that there are, but there's been a lot of talk of co-conspirators. If there are, name them in the indictment. There should be more than one defendant named. It could be that there are no other co-conspirators and there are no other proper defendants that the government thinks they can build a case against. It also could mean those other people made a deal. It could mean those other people, allow me to be cynical, are untouchable. And it could be that they filed this indictment and opened up this case as a means to try to open up cases against other people. And this may just be the beginning. I can't say. I don't know.
But it is a little odd that their names aren't. Is it odd for you as a lawyer to see that there's no names named in this indictment? Or is it common?
If there are co-conspirators, then yes, I find it.
Yeah, because everybody's asking about Ghislaine, however you want to pronounce it, Maxwell, and why she isn't in handcuffs, because so many witnesses have come forward and said, or victims, I should say, have come forward and said she was the main madam for Jeffrey Epstein. Is there any tracking on her, or what's going on, or what to expect where she's at?
There could be a few reasons that just come to mind. One could be that they're going to bring a case against her in a different jurisdiction. So it's going to be, or for some reason, the government thinks it's more appropriate to bring as a separate case. You know, a different federal prosecutor in a different jurisdiction maybe is closer to the witnesses there. So we could see another case against people like that. Or, you know, it could be that those people are cooperating.
Yeah.
You know, well, I could sit here and speculate, but all of those I think are reasonable.
Yeah.
Reasonable speculations. So.
Well, let me ask you another question right now, because I think the audience wants to know this and people want to know this out there, is how much can the government hide stuff and protect things at this point? In other words, a lot of people feel within the mainstream and the general population that it's reached a boiling point where the government has pushed so many things under the rug, they've sealed indictments, that it's a point where they can't get away with hiding people's names or keep people out of this. What point are we at right now? How much can the government hide, or is everything going to be transparent for us from this point out?
Well, if you mean the government, to include not only the United States government, who is the one bringing this action against Epstein, but also our court system and our federal judges. Federal judges will issue protective orders and orders sealing documents and orders to maintain confidentiality when there's a viable interest at stake to be protected, including the public safety, some sort of public interest. So there's a whole range of reasons, whether bona fide or not, that the government, meaning the United States Attorney's Office, who's prosecuting this case, can use to protect information and keep it confidential. So they are subject to political pressure. They're not supposed to be. They're, federal judges, especially, are lifetime appointments.
Yeah.
So, the thinking is so they're not subject to the political system, but federal prosecutors get appointed and then confirmed by the Senate.
Yeah.
So they are somewhat political animals. They're here supposed to be serving the public.
Yeah.
So I think they are and should be conscious of public opinion. So I think people just need to speak out. And I love what you guys are doing, because you're shining light on things that people might forget about. The attention span of our,
It's a sweep it under the rug kind of nation. Have you had any experiments with Richard Berman before? Do you have an opinion on him or no?
I've never practiced before that judge, but I've practiced before other judges in that courthouse. So that's the famous courthouse that you always see people taking pictures in front of when they get nailed on financial crimes, or some of the, a lot of people that were suspected of terrorism or convicted for terrorist acts. That happens all in that downtown New York, Southern District of New York courthouse, right on Pearl Street. So it's a very famous courthouse. It's right where Chinatown starts. So,
well, let me ask you another question. Let's talk about the prosecutors. Who picks the prosecutors for this case?
The United States Attorney, who is a
Barr recused himself, right?
Excuse me?
So Barr recused himself from this case.
Well, Barr is
the Attorney General, right?
Right, the AG, but the Southern District of New York has a United States Attorney who runs that whole office.
Got it.
Under the United States Attorney are a bunch of deputy U.S. attorneys who are usually the ones that do the actual work on the case. And we have a few that were named to handle that, but that was an internal administrative decision by the head prosecutor over there, the United States Attorney for the Southern District of New York. If anybody's seen the show Billions, it's the character that was played by sorry, brain fart.
Paul Giamatti.
Paul Giamatti.
Yeah.
Yes.
Sideways.
Sideways.
Makes me want to have a glass of Pinot Noir. Okay,
Exactly.
what I'm trying to find out and trying to see is, can there be any strings pulled on who's on the prosecution team? Because a lot of my watchers are interested, and they're very concerned that Maureen Comey, who is James Comey's daughter, is on the prosecution case, and that she's a Clinton loyalist. We've seen plenty of donations to Hillary Clinton and the fund, so a lot of people feel that she's there to mess up the case. What is your opinions about that? Because you had told me as far as lawyers or prosecutors are allowed to make donations, they're allowed to be involved in the political process, but isn't this a conflict of interest when it comes to Maureen Comey?
Yeah. I get questions like that a lot. You know, if a judge was in part of the same organization, you know, or coached a little league team, you know, in the same league as an attorney, you know, should the judge recuse himself from the attorney's case? We're supposed to have kind of uniform laws across the country, especially in the federal system, where what goes for a small town also goes for a big city. So you'll see a lot of those cases where you think there's a connection to a judge or a connection to a prosecutor, and they don't recuse themselves. Or somebody files a motion to recuse them and it fails. So I just say it depends on the closeness of the connection. So if Hillary Clinton becomes a target of this case and becomes a co-defendant or a co-conspirator, or if Bill Clinton does, who can be indicted now that he's not a sitting president, and this Maureen Ryan Comey, who's one of the assistant attorneys on the case, you know, was a volunteer on a Clinton campaign. Now we're getting like closer to a connection. But if she just donated $100, like so many other people, to, you know, one of many Democratic campaigns, and one happened to be Hillary Clinton's, that may not be enough connection for her boss, the United States Attorney of that district, to say, you know what, I'm pulling you.
Yeah.
Again, they're subject to public pressure. We'll see what comes out, what's uncovered.
Let's talk about public pressure then. Let me stop you right there. My watchers, where can they call to demand that Maureen Comey get taken off the case if they wanted to? Because we like to give people the connections to say, hey, if you don't like what's going on, call this congressman. You don't like what's going on, call that judge. Where could people call to air their complaints and maybe voice their opinion to say, hey, we don't want Maureen Comey on this case? Where would they call?
They are going to hate me for this, but if you want to get right at affecting the person that makes that decision, here's the phone number. It's the United States Attorney's Office for the Southern District of New York. The phone number is 212-637-2415. That's 212-637-2415.
All right. So we can call that number and say, dump Maureen, or in a nice way, please remove Maureen. We don't want Mrs. Comey. We want a fair trial. Let me ask you another question. This is an important one because I want to know, and he's going to put that number up on the screen, Johnny. Is that what you said? As a lawyer / citizen of the United States, a concerned citizen, on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the most confident, 1 being the least confident, how confident are you that this is going to be a fair trial? In other words, that Epstein is not going to get favors from everything that's set in play. Because a lot of people are saying that Berman, I believe he might have been appointed by Trump, right? Mm-hmm. I think he was. I could be wrong.
I don't know. I could figure that out in 2 seconds. So,
well, yeah. What is your confidence level, 1 to 10, and we'll take a look, from everybody who's being placed on this, from the Department of Justice, from the Southern District of New York, from the judge that's in play, from the police departments that are handling this, on a confidence level of 1 to 10, 1 being the least confident, 10 being the most confident. How confident are you that we can have a fair trial to get this son of a bitch and take down his whole network?
I've got to say a 6.
What makes you unweary? Why? Why not a 7, 8, or 9, or 10?
As a lawyer who practices in this federal system, I do think that compared to what I've seen throughout the world, I do think we have a very imperfect court system, but I do think it's the best, and it's the best shot at getting a fair shake, at having your case processed. Doesn't mean you're going to get justice. And every trial attorney you talk to will tell you it is a crapshoot. The most you can do is hedge your bets as much as you can, and by bringing the facts out. I do think that although this case has some very strange facts, and other cases involving Epstein also have some curious occurrences, I think because of the light that's being shined on him and his case by you guys at the CONVO Couch and plenty of other outlets, and because of the public interest in this case, I think we've got a better shot at there being a just result here, and a better shot at having a transparent proceeding, to the extent that the judge believes that transparency is within the public interest, and that there's no compelling reasons to keep things confidential or secret. So,
well, right now we got it at the 6, and I think we're going to have many more talks like this, ladies and gentlemen. So we got Attorney Santucci at a confidence level of 6 for a fair case. As we continue to talk over the next several months, you let me know if it's going up and down. You let our audience know, just so we can be aware of what's going on, and we can apply that public pressure that you've been talking about. And that's why I'm into this case, because it's important to apply public pressure. Let's get to the meat and potatoes of what my audience wants to hear today, Mike. Treasure, as I like to call you when I get serious. That's my nickname for Michael. I call him Treasure. What are we to expect next? My audience, many audiences are out there. They're waiting for marshals to kick down doors, start arresting people, and get this trial going. What are we to expect next, and when?
Well, there's a few scenarios. As everybody knows, you have a Fifth Amendment right not to incriminate yourself. So every criminal defendant can just zip lip, not give a deposition, not speak to the government, not provide any information whatsoever. But if this guy does start speaking to save his own ass, which happens in many federal cases, and he starts naming names, you may see new doors being kicked down. You may see new defendants being added to this case. You may see new federal lawsuits being filed in other jurisdictions by other federal prosecutors. So that could happen. And it could just be that the government's holding on to some cards right now, and they're going to drop some new indictments on additional people at when they think is the appropriate and most strategic time, given that they have, Epstein in custody right now. So what to expect next? The judge did deny, as I said, his motion for pretrial release, and that was entered fairly recently, as anybody that's been following this case knows. Mm-hmm. So he does have to stay in federal lockup. He's not going to be able to get an ankle bracelet. Epstein's attorneys filed an appeal of that order, remanding him to federal lockup. They want to try their hand at a higher court now determining whether or not he can be trusted on pretrial release. So that appeal will go, while this case goes on, the question of whether or not he can be released pretrial will go up to the Second Circuit Court of Appeals, which is a panel of judges that will review this judge's order and decide whether this judge made a mistake or not.
Yeah.
So the judge did file a request for speedy trial time exclusion.
What does that mean?
I can't tell you. I need to open the document and read it. So I'm sorry to have to get Tammy in here to grab that.
We'll go on to that on another show. We gotta wrap this up right now, because we got somebody who's got to go live in 5 minutes. Let me the final questions. So we haven't got a trial date yet. We don't even know if we'll get a trial date. There might be a deal cut, right? We still don't know that. Right now we're playing the waiting game. Your personal opinion too, and I'm just going to leave it at that, because you understand law. You've been a lawyer for quite some time. And when it comes to the federal system, exactly, right? You got gray, you didn't have gray hairs when you started. Now you got silver going on the side there. You're the silver fox.
So long, I'm starting to forget. So.
Your personal opinion. Is there a political divide within the federal court systems that we have to dodge and get through? In other words, a lot of people feel that there are two forces working against each other. A lot of people feel that since Donald Trump has become president and he's putting in his judge, that the deep state and the court systems are somewhat politicized and they're fighting against each other. Now, my biggest concern about that is that are there going to be two entities, one entity trying to hide Epstein stuff and one entity trying to expose his stuff? Is there a possibility that there's that split with loyalty between judges, Department of Justice within our system that might be effective in this case?
Absolutely, because there are human beings working on this case. Now, they're supposed to be under the command of one United States attorney. And I'm just talking about the prosecutors at this point. There's 4 that are named as working on this case. There's Maureen Ryan Comey. There's Alex Gainford Moe. There's Alex Ross Miller and one other. So they're supposed to be under the command of the United States attorney there in the Southern District of New York. But there's always ways to investigate something a little harder on this one issue, but not so much on the other issue. They're supposed to be, and they're sworn to an oath, where they're not supposed to follow their own political beliefs or political persuasions or influenced by politics. But, this is my personal opinion. It is unavoidable. It's in our DNA. It's in our psychology. It's hard to avoid your own biases.
Yeah.
So I bet you that some of the people working on this case are registered Democrats. Some are registered Republicans, and that's not supposed to matter, but I say supposed to. So it's just depends on how cynical you want to be. So.
Well, Michael, thank you for joining us today. We're going to have many more conversations like this. If you get anything new, anything hot off the wire, is what we like to call in the sports world, a big trade or something. If you get something big, do you promise to bring it back and share it with the Convo Couch?
I'll be right on you. And thank you. I'll be right with you. Thank you, Pasta, Fiorella, and Johnny, for doing a great job. Keep up good work.
Well, thank you. And we need the guards at the gate, and you're one of them. And keep an eye for us, Michael. We'll speak to you soon.
Will do.
Thank you. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for watching the Convo Couch. We'll repost everything up there. We'll have the numbers down below, and you can always find us here. Like, share, subscribe. We got a Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube, and we'll see you soon. Convo out.